Also, along the way, we use the dry principle, which is don't repeat yourself, to go through and clean up our code. At any time whenever we had code where we were repeating yourself, we went through and we removed it so that it was part of a common clean method. Along the way, we also followed the page object model, aka pattern, which helped us to develop very clean and reusable and readable tests. Then we learned a little bit about how to start our automation, which was tackling the low-hanging fruit first. So you always want to start with a smoke test. And smoke tests can be things that are critical functionality that must work in your application for the rest of your application to work. There's also things like the money path, which is how your application makes money, right? For example, if you're Facebook, then you need to make sure that a user can sign up and log into your application. If they can't sign up and log in, it doesn't matter. They can't use any of your other features. You may have a feature inside of the application that's so great, but nobody will ever be able to access it because they can't sign up or log in. So those are the kind of tests that you want to tackle first, and they will help you to develop your framework. Also, along the way, we follow the Yagna principle, which says that you aren't gonna need it. So basically, don't code any more than you need, right? Accomplish your goal, get it to production, and then go back and refactor after. This is one of the most important principles that I think a lot of people struggle with. I even struggle with. I always try to over-engineer. Don't over-engineer, just code what you need and then move on. And that actually is also keeping it simple, stupid, just following along all those principles. They're kind of together. There's a great article here on simpleprogrammer.com that just basically talks about why KISS is so good and so important to writing good code. Then we talked about the Hermetic test design pattern, which basically talks about how every test should be completely isolated in its own environment, right? So it should do its own setup, its own teardown, handle its own environments. They should not rely on other users from another test. They should not, like a login test, should not rely on a create user test that creates the user and then the login user test uses that user to log in. That's not how it should work, because you want each test to be able to run on its own, which will allow you to have the random run order principle so that your tests are executed in random run order, causing different environment behaviors. If you keep running the tests in the same manner over and over, the environment will never experience different states. But if you create a user one time and then log in with that user and then log in with the user and create a user, you never know what state your environment can get in. And there can be a possible state that can break things. And that's what you want to discover with your tests. And then, so doing this helps you to avoid this anti-pattern, which is the spaghetti anti-pattern, which is where all the tests weirdly get intertwined between each other, right? Where you use a user from one test to pass it to another test, and then maybe that test returns some kind of a value and then passes into another test. And so it just becomes a mess of spaghetti like strands intertwined between each other, and it's really freaking hard to follow what each test is doing, where it's going, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, we use the test-driven development to drive our framework development, which is really important. We learned that we need to test our tests. Again, I can't stress that enough. I don't know how many people I've seen, how many automation engineers I've seen that just develop tests that only pass, which is completely crazy to me, because the goal of your automated tests is not only to make sure that your functionality is working, it's also to make sure that regressions don't happen. But if your tests only pass, they're not going to catch any regressions, which is really crazy. So make sure you test your tests and that they not only pass, but they only fail. And finally, you need to make sure that your tests run fast and they fail fast. So they run fast and give you fast feedback, and they fail fast to give you fast feedback. Great not only for you, but great for any developer that is looking into your automated tests to find out what the freaking problem is.